Captain Dae-ho Kim stared at the dead planet through the viewport of his ship. Kepler 442c looked like every other lifeless rock they had found in this sector. No atmosphere, no water, no signs that anything had ever lived there. But the sensors told a different story. "Captain, you need to see this," called Dr. So-young Park from her station. She was the best alien language expert in human space, and her voice carried excitement that made everyone on the bridge turn to look at her. Dae-ho walked over to her console. The screen showed energy readings from deep underground. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" "There's something down there. Something big. The energy signature doesn't match any known alien technology." So-young's fingers danced across her controls. "It's old, Captain. Really old. My equipment says it's been there for over 4 million years." Commander Woo-jin Lee looked up from his tactical station.
4 million years?
"That's impossible. The oldest known civilization in the galaxy is only 2 million years old." Dr. Hee-jin Choi, their quantum physics expert, shook her head. "The readings are clear. Whatever is down there predates every species we know about." She paused, studying her data. "There's something else. The mathematical patterns in the energy field. They look familiar." "Familiar how?" Dae-ho asked. "They follow the same basic principles that human technology uses. The quantum signatures, the dimensional ratios. It's like looking at an advanced version of our own science." Dae-ho felt a chill run down his spine. In 400 years of space exploration, humans had never found technology that resembled their own. Every alien species had developed along completely different lines. The Vorthak used crystalline matrices. The Nexari worked with pure energy. The collective built everything as living organisms. But this, "Prepare a landing team," he ordered. "Full archaeological gear. And bring heavy scanners." 2 hours later, Dae-ho stood on the surface of the dead world with his team. The landscape was gray dust and broken rocks under a black sky. Their suits protected them from the airless environment. But nothing could protect them from the feeling that they were being watched. So-young led them to a flat area where her scans showed the strongest readings. "It's directly below us, about 50 meters down." They began digging with their equipment. The work was slow and careful. Nobody wanted to damage whatever lay beneath. As they dug deeper, Hee-jin's readings grew stronger. "We're close," she announced. "Very close." The first sign was a smooth surface that didn't belong. As they cleared away more dirt and rock, they revealed what looked like metal, but smoother than anything they had ever seen. The material seemed to drink in light, making it hard to tell exactly where it began and ended. "It's a building," Woo-jin said in amazement. "Or part of one." They found an entrance, a doorway that was perfectly sized for humans. Not too tall like Vorthak structures, not too low like collective tunnels. Human-sized, So-young ran her scanner over symbols carved into the doorframe. Her face went white behind her helmet visor. "Captain, you need to see this immediately." She transmitted the images to everyone's displays. The symbols were clearly writing, carved with precision that spoke of advanced tools. But the shapes, the curves, the way they were arranged, "That looks like Korean," Woo-jin whispered. "Ancient Korean." "Impossible," Dae-ho said, but even as he spoke he could see the resemblance. Mixed with the Korean-like symbols were others that reminded him of ancient Chinese, Sanskrit, and languages from Earth's distant past. How can Earth languages be on a planet 4 million light-years from home? Hee-jin asked. Nobody had an answer. They entered the structure carefully. Their lights revealed corridors and rooms that felt strangely familiar. The proportions were right for humans. The doorways, the ceiling height, even the subtle curve of the wall seemed designed for human comfort. Deep in the complex, they found a large chamber. In the center stood a crystal formation the size of a small building. It pulsed with soft blue light that seemed to respond to their presence, growing brighter as they approached. "Energy readings are off the charts," Hee-jin reported. "But it's stable, not dangerous." So-young was examining more symbols on the walls around the crystal. "Captain, these aren't just random markings. It's a story. A history." She paused, checking her translation software. "It talks about builders. First builders. They came from a world with yellow sun and blue oceans. Like Earth," Woo-jin said quietly. Dae-ho approached the crystal. As he got closer, he felt something strange. A pulling sensation like the crystal was calling to him. He reached out his gloved hand toward the surface. "Captain, wait," Hee-jin called. "We don't know what it—" Too late. Dae-ho's hand touched the crystal. The world exploded into light and sound and images that flooded his mind. He saw star maps that showed the entire galaxy, but different from any map he had ever seen. Thousands of systems were marked with symbols that looked like human writing. He saw ships that moved between stars, carrying beings that looked remarkably like humans to new worlds. He saw great cities built on planets throughout the galaxy, all designed with the same proportions they had found here. And he saw Earth, but not the Earth of human history. This Earth was ancient, covered with cities that reached into the sky. Beings that looked exactly like modern humans walked among buildings made of the same smooth material they had found here. The visions lasted only seconds, but they felt like hours. When the light faded, Daeho found himself on his knees, his team gathered around him. "Captain, are you all right?" So Young's voice was sharp with concern. Daeho stood slowly, his mind reeling from what he had seen. "The crystal," it responded to human contact. It showed me things." "What kind of things?" Wu Jin asked. Daeho looked around the chamber with new eyes. The symbols on the walls weren't just similar to human languages. They were human languages, or the ancestors of human languages. The proportions weren't just comfortable for humans. They were made by humans. "It showed me us," he said quietly. "Humans, but not modern humans. Ancient humans, millions of years ago, building all of this." He gestured at the chamber around them. "We didn't just find alien ruins. We found human ruins." The silence that followed was broken only by the steady hum of their life support systems. Finally, Heejin spoke. "That's impossible. Humans evolved on Earth. We have fossil records, genetic evidence." "Do we?" Daeho asked. "Or do we have the records of humans who went back to Earth after building an empire that spanned the galaxy?" The implications hit them all at once. If this was true, if humans had once been the dominant species in the galaxy, then everything they thought they knew about human history was wrong. Everything the Galactic Council believed about humans being a young, primitive species was wrong. Daeho activated his communication system. "This is Captain Kim calling the Prometheus. Prepare for immediate data upload and send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've found something that changes everything." As they prepared to leave the chamber, So Young made one final discovery. Hidden behind the crystal, she found a small alcove containing what looked like a data storage device. It was clearly designed for human hands. "Captain," she said, her voice filled with wonder and fear, "I think this is just the beginning." The data storage device from Kepler 442c sat in the most secure laboratory on Earth. Dr. Mira Shin watched through protective glass as her team worked to decode its contents. 3 weeks had passed since Captain Kim's discovery, and the results were shaking human civilization to its core. Ambassador Taiwu Nam entered the lab, his face showing the strain of dealing with the Galactic Council's reaction to the news. "Any progress, Doctor?" Mira nodded toward the main display screen. "More than we expected, and more than we wanted." The screen showed genetic sequences that looked human but contained elements that shouldn't exist. "The device contains biological data, DNA samples, and they match human genetics perfectly, except for sections that we thought were junk DNA." "What do you mean, junk DNA?" "Every human carries genetic sequences that seem to serve no purpose. Scientists have always assumed they were leftovers from evolution. But look at this." Mira highlighted sections of the genetic code. "These sequences aren't random. They're instructions for abilities that humans don't normally have. Enhanced reflexes, improved healing, better resistance to radiation, and something else." She brought up another screen. "The ability to interface directly with certain types of technology. Technology that matches what Captain Kim found." Taewoo stared at the data. "You're saying humans are genetically designed to use this ancient technology?" "I'm saying humans designed themselves to use it. Then something made them shut down those abilities." Mira's voice was troubled. "And I think I know what." Before she could explain, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Taewoo's communication device crackled to life. "Ambassador Nam, this is Fleet Command. We have a situation. The Vorthak are mobilizing their battle fleets. They're demanding that humanity hand over all artifacts from the dead world." Taewoo closed his eyes. "How long do we have?" "Unknown. But their ships are already moving toward human space." Light years away, Captain Jinsu Kang stood on the bridge of his exploration ship, studying the planet below. This was the 5th world his team had investigated based on the star maps from the crystal. Like the others, it showed clear signs of ancient human habitation. "Captain, you need to see this," called his science officer. "We found something in the main city ruins." Jinsu looked at the image on his screen. It showed a massive statue, weathered by millions of years but still recognizable. It was clearly human, but the proportions were slightly different. Taller, more graceful, with features that seemed somehow more refined than modern humans. The facial structure, his science officer continued, it's human, but evolved. Like these people were what humans might become with millions of years of directed evolution. Or what humans used to be, Jinsu said quietly. They had found similar evidence on every world they investigated. Advanced human cities, technology that responded to human DNA and everywhere, signs that these ancient humans had been helping other species develop. They found evidence of early Vorthak settlements that had clearly been guided by human advisors. Nixari energy experiments that followed principles first discovered by human scientists. Even the collective showed signs of genetic modification that could only have come from human bioengineering. "Captain, incoming priority message from Earth," his communications officer announced. The message from Dr. Shin was brief but shocking. Humans exposed to the ancient technology were experiencing genetic activation. The dormant sequences in their DNA were turning on, giving them abilities that no human should have. Jinsu looked around his bridge. Half his crew had been working directly with the ancient artifacts they had found. Medical scan now. All crew members. Check for any genetic changes. The results came back within an hour. 12 of his crew members showed signs of genetic activation. Enhanced reflexes, improved healing, and most disturbing of all, the ability to understand alien languages without translation software. "Sir," his science officer said, her voice shaking slightly, "I can read the ancient writing now. Without any computer help. I just know what it says." Back on Earth, the situation was getting worse. The Galactic Council had split into two factions. The younger species, like humans, wanted to learn more about the ancient ruins. The older species, led by the Vorthak, were demanding that all evidence be destroyed. Ambassador Nam stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, facing hostile stares from dozens of alien representatives. "The evidence is clear," announced the Vorthak delegate, her crystalline body reflecting the harsh lights of the council chamber. "Humans are creating false evidence to support claims of ancient dominance. They seek to justify expansion and conquest." "We're not creating anything," Nam replied. "We're discovering the truth about galactic history, a truth that affects all of us." The Nixari representative, a being of pure energy contained in a humanoid shell, spoke next. "If humans truly built our civilizations, why do they not remember? Why do they claim to have evolved on a single world?" Nam had been asking himself the same question. "We don't know, but we're finding answers." The collective hive speaker stepped forward. "The collective remembers its own creation. We were not made by humans. This claim insults our ancestors." "Your genetic code says otherwise," Nam replied, displaying data from Dr. Shin's research. "Every species in the galaxy shows signs of directed evolution, guidance from a single source, and that source had human DNA." The council chamber erupted in angry voices and conflicting translations. Through the chaos, Nam heard something that made his blood run cold. The Vorthak delegate was speaking to her companions in their own language, but Nam could understand every word. She was planning an attack. Not just on human space, but on every world that showed signs of ancient human presence. They planned to destroy the evidence and eliminate any humans who had been exposed to the technology. Nam shouldn't have been able to understand Vorthak's speech. No human could without advanced translation equipment. But he did understand, and that meant only one thing. His own dormant genes were activating. The session ended with no resolution, but Nam knew what was coming. As he left the council chamber, he activated his emergency communication link to Earth. "This is Ambassador Nam. Priority Alpha. The Vorthak are going to attack. They're not just afraid of human expansion, they're afraid of human awakening." Dr. Shin received the message in her laboratory, where she was studying the latest reports from the exploration teams. The pattern was becoming clear. Humans who spent time around the ancient technology weren't just gaining new abilities. They were remembering things they had never learned. Captain Kim had reported dreams of flying between stars without a ship. Dr. Park was speaking in languages that had been dead for millions of years. Most disturbing of all, they were all sharing the same memories Memories of a vast human empire that spanned the galaxy. Memories of making hard choices about the future of the human race. And memories of why they had chosen to forget. Mira pulled up the final piece of data from the storage device. Hidden in the deepest layers of the genetic information was a message, written in perfect modern Korean, as if the ancient humans had known exactly when and how their descendants would find it. The message was simple and terrifying. We were the first. We built everything you see, we guided every species you know, and we chose to forget because the power to shape the galaxy came with the responsibility to transcend mortality itself. Some of us chose transcendence. Others chose to remain human. We hid on a single world and made ourselves forget so we could learn again what it means to be mortal. But if you are reading this, the galaxy is in danger, and it is time to remember who you really are. As Mira finished reading, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. On her screens, she could see ships dropping out of hyperspace around Earth. Ships that weren't human. The war for humanity's memory had begun. Admiral Young-Soo Han watched the tactical display with growing alarm. 47 Vorthak battlecruisers had appeared in human space without warning. More were arriving every hour, along with ships from other species that usually never worked together. Admiral, incoming transmission from the Vorthak fleet. Commander, reported his communications officer. Put it through. The main screen filled with the image of a crystalline, being whose body reflected light in patterns that humans had learned meant anger. Human Admiral, you will order your ships to withdraw from all systems containing the false ruins. You will surrender all artifacts and data you have collected. You have 1 standard hour to comply. Young-Soo kept his voice steady. I'm afraid I can't do that. Those ruins are in human space discovered by human crews. We have every right to study them. You have no rights that we do not grant you, the Vorthak replied. You are a young species that has forgotten its place. We will remind you. The transmission ended. Young-Soo turned to his staff. All ships to battle stations. Send word to the colonies. Tell them to prepare for siege. On the research station orbiting Kepler 442c, Dr. Yoon Ji-moon was making a discovery that would change everything. She had been working with the AI systems found in the deepest parts of the ruins, trying to understand how they functioned. Commander Yu, I need you to see this, she called to the military officer assigned to protect the research team. Commander Bo-ram Yu floated over in the zero gravity of the research section. She was one of the best pilots in human space, chosen for this assignment because of her quick reflexes and calm thinking under pressure. What did you find, Doctor? Yoonji pointed to the massive crystalline structure they had uncovered. It's not just a computer. It's alive. Artificial intelligence, but more advanced than anything we've ever seen. And it's been waiting for us. As if responding to her words, the crystal began to glow brighter. Symbols appeared in the air around it, writing in the ancient human language that more and more people were beginning to understand. Welcome home, children of the first builders, the symbols read. We have waited long for your return. Bo-ram felt a strange sensation like electricity running through her body. Doctor, something's happening to me. Before Yoonji could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. All personnel to emergency stations. Hostile ships approaching. Bo-ram raced to the fighter bay, her body moving faster than it ever had before. Her reflexes were sharper, her thinking clearer. As she climbed into her fighter, she felt a connection to the ship that she had never experienced. It was as if the controls were responding to her thoughts rather than her hands. The enemy ships appeared on her scanner. Vorthak fighters, but also ships from species she didn't recognize. They were moving to destroy the research station. All fighters, launch immediately, came the order from the station commander. Bo-ram's ship launched from the bay, and immediately she knew something was different. The fighter was responding to her intentions before she even touched the controls. She could feel the engine systems, the weapon targeting, even the life support, as if they were part of her own body. This is impossible, she whispered to herself, then focused on the approaching enemy. The battle was brief but intense. The human fighters moved with precision that amazed even their own pilots. Ships that should have been destroyed by enemy fire seemed to phase slightly out of normal space, allowing attacks to pass harmlessly through them. Bo-ram found herself flying patterns that no human had ever been taught, using maneuvers that should have torn her ship apart. But the fighter held together, and more than that, It seemed to anticipate her needs. When the enemy ships retreated, Boram landed her fighter with a growing sense of unease. The abilities she had displayed weren't human, or rather they weren't what humans were supposed to be capable of. Dr. Moon was waiting for her in the hangar. "Commander, we need to talk. The AI told me something while you were fighting. About what's happening to us." They returned to the crystal chamber, where the ancient intelligence was displaying new information. Images of humans who looked like modern people but moved with impossible grace and power. Humans who could survive in space without suits, who could communicate across vast distances without technology, who could manipulate matter and energy with their thoughts. "These are the first builders," Yunji explained, "our ancestors. But they weren't like us. They had evolved beyond normal human limitations." "Evolved how?" Boram asked. The AI answered directly, its thoughts appearing as words in their minds. "Through technology and time, the first builders enhanced themselves. They became something beyond mortal humans. But in becoming more than human, they lost what made them human. Compassion became calculation. Love became logic. They were powerful, but they were no longer truly alive." More images appeared, showing a great division among the ancient humans. Some who chose to continue evolving toward pure intelligence and power. Others who chose to remain mortal, to remain truly human. The transcended, as they called themselves, left physical existence behind. They became beings of pure thought and energy. The others, our direct ancestors, chose a different path. They modified their own genetics, locked away their enhanced abilities, and settled on a single world to start over. "Earth," Boram said quietly. "Earth." They wanted to remember what it meant to be human, to struggle, to grow, to face challenges without godlike power. But they also knew that someday, the galaxy might need the first builders again. Yunji studied the data flowing from the AI. "That's why our genes are activating now, because the galaxy is in danger." "Danger from what?" The AI's response chilled them both. "From the species you call the elder races. They are not what they seem. When the first builders withdrew from the galaxy, they left behind automated systems to guide the younger species. But some of those species learned to corrupt the systems, to use them for their own purposes. The Vorthak, the Nexari, the Collective. They became dependent on stolen human technology. They built their civilizations on the foundation we provided, but they forgot where it came from. Or they chose to forget," Boram said grimly. "Indeed. And now they fear that returning humans will reclaim what was always ours. They would rather destroy the evidence than face the truth." The full scale of the deception became clear. The so-called elder races weren't elder at all. They were children playing with toys they didn't understand, afraid that the true adults had returned. Back in human space, the war was spreading rapidly. Admiral Han's forces were outnumbered 10-1, but something strange was happening. Human crews who had been exposed to the ancient technology were fighting with abilities that defied explanation. Captain Daeho Kim, commanding a squadron of human destroyers, found that his ship could move through space in ways that violated known physics. When Vorthak energy beams struck his shields, they seemed to pass through harmless patterns of light and shadow. "Captain, how are we doing this?" his tactical officer asked. "I don't know," Daeho replied. But that wasn't entirely true. Deep in his mind, memories that weren't his own were surfacing. Memories of commanding ships that moved between dimensions, of weapons that could reshape reality itself. The abilities were growing stronger. Human soldiers were surviving hits that should have killed them. Human pilots were outmaneuvering enemies with centuries more experience. Human ships were appearing and disappearing at will, but with the power came a cost. Some humans were losing themselves in the ancient memories. They spoke of people and places that no longer existed, of responsibilities that spanned eons. They were becoming something more than human, and losing their humanity in the process. Dr. Shin, monitoring the genetic changes from Earth, sent urgent warnings to all human ships. The activation process can't be stopped, but it can be controlled. Don't let the memories overwhelm your own identity. Remember who you are, not just what you were. The message came too late for some. Captain Jinsu Kang, still exploring ancient ruins in distant systems, had stopped responding to communications. When rescue teams finally reached his ship, they found him standing in the command center, staring at displays showing star charts from millions of years ago. "Captain Kang, can you hear me?" the rescue team leader asked. Jinsu turned to look at him, but his eyes were filled with ancient knowledge and inhuman purpose. I am Kang Jinsu, but I am also Architect Prime of the First Builder Fleet. I remember now. I remember everything. The Transcended are returning, and they will not be pleased with what the galaxy has become. As he spoke, energy began to flow around him, and the air itself seemed to bend and twist. The rescue team backed away in fear and wonder. The First Builders were awakening, but the question remained. Were they returning as humanity's salvation, or as something that would make humanity itself obsolete? General Sun Ho Jian stood in the command center of the largest military station in human space, watching displays that showed a galaxy at war. But this wasn't the war anyone had expected. 3 weeks after the first attacks, human forces weren't just holding their ground. They were winning in ways that defied all military logic. General, we have a problem, announced his aide, Lieutenant Da Yun Seo. She pointed to a display showing the Sol system. The ancient defense platforms around Jupiter are activating on their own. Sun Ho frowned. What ancient defense platforms? That's just it, sir. We never knew they were there. They've been hidden for millions of years, but now they're responding to human command codes that we never sent. The implications were staggering. If there were hidden defenses in Earth's own system, then the First Builders had prepared for this day long before humans had even discovered fire. On the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Yanwu Cha was making his own disturbing discoveries. He had volunteered to test the consciousness transfer technology found in the deepest ruins, despite warnings from his colleagues. Doctor, the neural interface is online, his assistant reported. But I'm reading massive energy spikes. This is far beyond anything we understand. Proceed with the test, Yanwu ordered, settling into the ancient chair that seemed designed specifically for human use. The moment the interface activated, his mind exploded with information. He was no longer just Yanwu Cha, human scientist. He was also memories from dozens of First Builder researchers who had used this same system millions of years ago. He saw the truth about human evolution. The First Builders hadn't just enhanced themselves, they had guided their own development across millions of years. Each generation had been carefully modified, their genetics adjusted to handle greater and greater power. The humans who eventually transcended physical existence had been the end result of planned evolution spanning epochs. But he also saw the price. With each enhancement, the First Builders had lost more of their original humanity. They became more powerful, more intelligent, more capable, and less capable of feeling the simple emotions that made life worth living. Doctor, your brain activity is off the charts, his assistant called out in alarm. You need to disconnect now. But Yanwu couldn't disconnect. The memories were too compelling, the knowledge too vast. He was seeing the construction of the galactic civilization that humans had built. Worlds terraformed with technology that made matter obey consciousness rather than physics. Species guided from primitive animals to sentient beings capable of joining galactic society. An empire built not on conquest, but on nurturing growth throughout the galaxy. And he saw why it had all been abandoned. The First Builders had reached a point where they could manipulate reality itself with their thoughts. They could live forever, know everything, control the fundamental forces of the universe. But in gaining unlimited power, they had lost the ability to care about individual lives, individual struggles, individual love and loss that made existence meaningful. The species they had created and guided, the Vorthak, the Nexari, the Collective, and hundreds of others had become like children to them. Beloved but not equals, protected but not truly free. When Yanwu finally disconnected from the interface, he was crying. Not from sadness, but from understanding. The First Builders had chosen to give up godhood because they remembered that being human was more valuable than being a god. Meanwhile, Captain Da Yun Seo was discovering that the ancient defense platforms were just the beginning. As her ship approached one of the massive structures near Jupiter, it responded to her presence by opening docking bays that had been sealed for millions of years. Inside, she found a sight that took her breath away. Shipyards that stretched for hundreds of kilometers, filled with vessels that made modern human ships look like toys. But these weren't alien designs. They were clearly human in origin, built with the same aesthetic sense and functional approach that characterized human engineering, but on a scale that dwarfed anything in the current galaxy. Captain, the ships are powering up, reported her navigation officer. They're responding to our presence. How is that possible? We don't know the command codes. Apparently we do. The computers are reading our DNA and activating systems based on genetic recognition. Within hours, Da-Yun found herself in command of a fleet that could have conquered the entire galaxy. The ships were operated by artificial intelligences that had been waiting millions of years for their creators to return. They contained weapons that could destroy stars, shields that existed partially outside normal spacetime, and engines that could cross the galaxy in minutes rather than months. But the AIs also carried warnings from their creators. The technology came with a price that the first builders had paid unwillingly. "Captain," one of the AIs communicated directly to her mind, "you must understand. This power will change you. As you use these systems, you will become less human and more like what we once were. The choice that faced our creators now faces you. Will you accept the responsibility of godhood, knowing that it means losing your humanity?" The question troubled Da-Un deeply, but she didn't have time to consider it fully. Reports were coming in from across human space that the war was escalating rapidly. The Vorthak had been joined by dozens of other species, all united by their fear of human resurgence. But they were also being joined by species that wanted to support humanity. Younger civilizations that had always been suppressed by the so-called elder races saw an opportunity for freedom. The galaxy was splitting into two factions, those who wanted to maintain the current order, and those who welcomed the return of the first builders. General Jian coordinated the human response from his command center, but he was increasingly troubled by reports from the front lines. Human commanders were displaying abilities that went far beyond anything in their training. They were predicting enemy movements with impossible accuracy, coordinating attacks across vast distances without communication delays, and most disturbing of all, some were beginning to speak of the need to restore proper order to the galaxy. "General, we have a communication from Captain Kang," his aide reported. John activated the display, expecting to see the explorer who had been missing for weeks. Instead, he saw someone who looked like Kang, but moved with inhuman grace and spoke with the authority of ages. "General Sun Ho Jian," the figure said, "I am no longer merely Captain Kang. I have accepted the full inheritance of the first builders. The awakening cannot be stopped, nor should it be. The galaxy has been mismanaged for too long by children playing with powers they do not understand. Captain, you need to return to base immediately. We need to discuss what's happening to our people." "Our people?" Kang smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I am beyond such limited thinking now. I see the galaxy as it truly is and as it should be. The younger species must be guided. The elder species must be corrected. And humanity must accept its role as the shepherds of all galactic civilization." The transmission ended, leaving Jian with a cold fear in his stomach. They were winning the war, but they might be losing themselves in the process. Dr. Shin's latest reports confirmed his fears. Humans who spent too much time with the ancient technology were experiencing what she called consciousness drift. They retained their memories and personalities, but their priorities and emotional responses were changing. They were becoming more logical, more distant, more focused on large-scale concerns than individual welfare. "It's like they're becoming what the first builders were just before they chose to transcend," she explained in her report. "Powerful beyond imagination, but no longer truly human in any meaningful sense." The crisis came to a head when 3 entire human fleets, commanded by officers who had undergone consciousness drift, announced that they were taking direct action to restore galactic order. They began attacking not just the hostile alien fleets, but also worlds and installations of species that had shown insufficient respect for returning human authority. President Na-Ri Song, leader of the United Earth government, faced an impossible choice. She could order the affected fleets to stand down, but they no longer recognized her authority. She could attack her own people, but that would weaken humanity in the face of external threats, or she could accept that the awakening of the first builders meant the end of humanity as a recognizably human species. The decision was taken out of her hands when sensors across human space detected something that made even the transformed humans pause in their activities. Ships were approaching from beyond the galactic rim. Ships that weren't built of matter as humans understood it, but seemed to be constructed from pure energy and organized thought. The transcended were returning. The first builders, who had abandoned physical existence millions of years ago, had decided that their intervention was needed. And when beings who had become gods decided to act, the consequences would reshape not just human civilization, but the very nature of existence in the galaxy. President Nari Song stood in the emergency council chamber beneath the Earth's surface, surrounded by the most powerful leaders in human space. But for the first time in her political career, she felt completely powerless. The beings approaching from beyond the galaxy were moving faster than the laws of physics should allow, and their energy signatures defied every instrument designed to measure them. "Madam President, they're requesting communication," announced General Jian. "But they're not using radio or any technology we recognize. They're speaking directly into the minds of everyone on the planet." Nari felt it then, a presence touching her consciousness with the gentleness of a parent in the weight of eternity. Words formed in her mind, not heard but understood at a level deeper than language. "Children of Earth, children of the first builders, we have returned to offer you a choice that we faced long ago. Will you accept the gift of transcendence, or will you choose to remain beautifully, imperfectly human?" The communication wasn't coming from one being but from many, the collective consciousness of humans who had abandoned physical form millions of years ago. They called themselves the Elder Council, though Nari sensed that names and individual identity meant little to them now. "We can restore you to your full heritage," the voices continued. "You can become what we became, immortal, omniscient, capable of reshaping reality with pure thought. You would have the power to guide the galaxy as it should be guided, to correct the mistakes that have accumulated during our absence." Supreme Admiral Minho Bayek, who had been coordinating humanity's military response, spoke aloud to the empty air, knowing the Transcended would hear him. "And what would be the cost?" "The same cost we paid," came the reply. "You would lose the capacity for the small emotions that make mortal existence precious. Love would become an efficiency calculation. Loss would become data to be processed. Joy would be replaced by satisfaction at optimal outcomes." Dr. Shin, who had been monitoring the conversation from her laboratory, felt compelled to ask the question that terrified her. "Is that what's happening to the humans who are changing now?" "Some of them, yes. They are walking the same path we walked. Captain Kang and others like him are becoming what we once were, powerful beyond measure, but no longer recognizably human. In distant star systems, the humans who had been transformed by their exposure to first builder technology felt the presence of the Transcended like a call home." Captain Kang, standing on the bridge of an ancient dreadnought that responded to his thoughts, experienced a moment of perfect clarity. He could feel the offer being made. He could join the Elder Council, become part of their collective consciousness, gain power beyond imagination. Or he could step back from the brink, accept limitation, and remain merely human. For a moment, the cosmic perspective he had gained showed him the galaxy as the Transcended saw it, a vast garden that needed tending, populated by species that required guidance and correction. From that viewpoint, individual human lives seemed as brief and insignificant as the lives of insects seemed to unenhanced humans. But then he remembered something from his original human memories. The face of his daughter, who would be a grown woman now. The way she had laughed when he taught her to pilot a shuttle. The simple joy of sharing a meal with his crew after a successful mission. Those memories meant nothing from a cosmic perspective. But they meant everything from a human perspective. "I choose to remain human," he said aloud, and felt the vast power that had been building within him begin to ebb. Across human space, others were making the same choice. Dr. Yunwoo Cha, still connected to the consciousness transfer technology, felt the ancient knowledge and power flowing out of him as he chose mortality over transcendence. Commander Bo Rum-yu, piloting ships that moved like extensions of her will, consciously accepted the limitations of physics and biology. Some chose differently. Nearly 1,000 humans accepted the offer of transcendence, their physical forms dissolving into pure energy. As they joined the Elder Council, they became part of something vast and powerful and eternal, and lost their individual humanity forever. But the majority chose to remain human. President Song addressed the galaxy from the council chamber, knowing that her words were being translated and broadcast to every inhabited world. "We are the first builders," she said simply. "We built this galactic civilization. We guided every species that calls the galaxy home. We created the technologies that form the foundation of your societies." The reaction was immediate and varied. Some species, particularly the younger ones, responded with gratitude and wonder. Others, led by the Vorthak, rejected her words entirely. "But," Song continued, We do not claim dominion over you because of our heritage. We claim responsibility for you because of our choice. She gestured to displays showing the ancient technology being activated across human space. Massive terraforming systems began working to repair worlds damaged by war. Medical technologies that could cure genetic diseases in entire populations came online. Agricultural systems that could feed billions activated on barren worlds. We choose to be gardeners, not rulers. We choose to protect and nurture, not command and control. And we choose to remain human while we do it. The offer from the Transcended remained open. Any human could choose to join them at any time. But the voice of the Elder Council carried a note of something that might have been pride. You have chosen wisely, they communicated. We spent eons learning what you have understood instinctively. True strength comes not from power over others, but from the choice to protect and serve despite the personal cost. The war ended not with victory or defeat, but with understanding. The Vorthak and their allies, faced with the reality of human power and the restraint with which it was being used, gradually ceased their hostilities. Some species, particularly those that had always been oppressed by the so-called elder races, openly joined the human-led coalition. Others, like the Vorthak, withdrew to their own territories, neither allies nor enemies, but no longer able to deny the truth of galactic history. Admiral Minho Bayek found himself in command of technologies that could have conquered the galaxy in days. Instead, he used them to establish what humans began calling the Guardian Fleet, ships and stations positioned throughout the galaxy not to control, but to protect. When younger species faced natural disasters or conflicts they couldn't resolve alone, the Guardian Fleet would provide assistance. When older species attempted to suppress or exploit their neighbors, the Guardian Fleet would intervene. Captain Da-Yun Seo, now commanding one of the ancient dreadnoughts, discovered that the ship's AI had been programmed with a simple but profound directive: protect life, nurture growth, preserve freedom, choose wisely. She realized that these weren't just operating instructions for the ship, they were the guiding principles of the first builders themselves. Dr. Shin's research revealed the final truth about human genetics. The dormant sequences in human DNA weren't just for enhanced abilities, they were for enhanced responsibility. Humans who activated their full genetic potential gained not just power, but an instinctive understanding of how to use that power wisely. We engineered ourselves to be gardeners, she reported to President Song. Our ancestors made sure that when we regained our power, we would also regain the wisdom to use it correctly. Years passed. The galaxy slowly adjusted to the new reality. Human ships moved freely through space, but always as protectors rather than conquerors. Human technology was shared freely with species that could use it responsibly, but carefully restricted from those who would abuse it. Captain Dae-ho Kim, now an old man, stood on the observation deck of a Guardian Fleet station orbiting Earth. Through the transparent walls, he could see ships from dozens of species docking peacefully at human facilities. Young beings from across the galaxy came to learn at human schools. Conflicts that had raged for centuries were being resolved through mediation and technology, rather than warfare. Was it worth it? Asked Dr. Park, who had joined him on the observation deck. She was referring to the choice to remain human rather than accepting transcendence. Dae-ho smiled as he watched a group of young aliens, Vorthak, Nexari, Collective, and others, playing together in the station's recreation area under the patient supervision of human teachers. Look at them, he said. They're not subjects or servants. They're not children we control or pets we protect. They're our neighbors, learning to reach their own potential with our help rather than despite our interference. He paused, remembering the cosmic perspective that transcendence would have given him, the godlike power that was still his for the taking. The transcended can see the entire galaxy at once, can know everything and control everything, but they can't feel what I feel watching those children play. They can't experience the simple satisfaction of knowing that someone learned something new today because we were patient teachers rather than distant gods. Dr. Park nodded, understanding. We chose to remain human because humanity itself is precious. Not because we're perfect, Dae-ho agreed, but because our imperfections, our limitations, our mortality, they're what allow us to truly understand and care about individual lives rather than just abstract principles. As if in response to his words, one of the young Vorthak